The first night Daniel Mercer slept in the cabin, he woke to the sound of someone crying outside his window. Not the kind of cry carried by wolves or the wind through the pine trees. This was human, soft, broken, like someone trying not to be heard. And when he opened the door and stepped into the freezing mountain fog, he saw a young woman standing near the edge of the forest in a pale blue coat, staring at him with eyes full of sorrow. "You finally came," she whispered. Then she disappeared into the darkness. Before this story begins, take 1 second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the people we meet are carrying storms we cannot see, and sometimes love arrives in the loneliest places when we need it most. Daniel Mercer had not planned on buying a cabin in the mountains. At 42 years old, his life had collapsed so quietly that most people never noticed it happening. He had once owned a successful architecture firm in Seattle. He had a beautiful apartment, a wife named Claire, and a son named Noah whose laugh used to echo through every room like sunlight. But grief changes the shape of a man. 3 years earlier, Daniel lost Noah in a car accident during a winter storm. The boy had only been 11. Claire never recovered from it. Neither did Daniel. But people survive pain differently. Claire became distant, silent, unreachable. Daniel buried himself in work until there was nothing left between them except memories too painful to touch. The divorce papers arrived 6 months later. After that, Daniel stopped caring about almost everything. The cabin advertisement appeared one sleety night while he was scrolling through old property listings online. Small mountain cabin, remote, cheap, needs repairs. Something about the image pulled at him. The cabin stood alone beneath towering evergreens beside a frozen lake surrounded by mountains that looked ancient and eternal. The description mentioned that the previous owner had died years ago and no one had lived there since. Daniel bought it without even visiting first. Maybe because he wanted silence. Maybe because he wanted to disappear. Or maybe because deep down, broken people sometimes go looking for places as lonely as they are. The drive into the mountains took nearly 8 hours. By the time Daniel reached the cabin, snow was falling heavily across the narrow roads. The place looked worse than the pictures. The wooden porch sagged slightly. Frost clung to the windows. Half the roof was buried beneath snow, and the surrounding woods stretched endlessly into darkness. But strangely, Daniel liked it immediately. No city noise, no reminders, no pity in anyone's eyes. Just silence. He unpacked only the essentials that first evening. A few clothes, tools, some canned food, a photograph of Noah that he kept in his coat pocket. The electricity worked inconsistently. The fireplace barely warmed the living room. Wind hissed through cracks in the walls. But for the first time in years, Daniel felt something close to peace. Until the crying woke him. After the strange woman vanished into the fog, Daniel searched the surrounding woods with a flashlight for nearly 20 minutes. He found no footprints, no signs of anyone nearby. By morning, he convinced himself exhaustion had caused some kind of dream. Yet something bothered him. The words she spoke. "You finally came." Not, "Who are you?" Not, "Help me," as if she had been waiting. The next few days passed quietly. Daniel repaired broken cabinets, chopped wood, cleaned decades of dust from the rooms. Slowly, the cabin began to feel alive again. But odd things kept happening. Some mornings he found fresh flowers left on the porch despite the deep snow. Once, he heard humming upstairs even though he lived alone. Another night, he saw the same woman standing across the frozen lake beneath moonlight before vanishing among the trees. Daniel began asking questions in the nearest mountain town nearly 30 miles away. Most locals avoided discussing the cabin. An old gas station owner finally spoke after long hesitation. "That place belonged to Elias Whitmore," the man said quietly. "People around here called him the Mountain Keeper." "What happened to him?" "Died almost 20 years ago." "Did he have family?" The old man paused. "A daughter." Daniel felt cold suddenly. What was her name? Anna. The name stayed in Daniel's mind all the way back to the cabin. That night, the snowstorm arrived. Wind screamed across the mountains while ice battered the windows. Around midnight, the power died completely. Daniel sat near the fireplace wrapped in blankets when he heard footsteps upstairs. Slow footsteps. Deliberate. The cabin creaked as someone moved above him. His heart pounded. He grabbed a flashlight and climbed the narrow staircase. The second floor contained only 2 small bedrooms and a storage loft. Dust coated everything, but one door stood slightly open. Daniel pushed it carefully. Inside was a small room untouched by time. A faded quilt rested on the bed. Books lined the shelves. A music box sat beside the window. And on the wall hung dozens of drawings. Mountains, trees, lakes, and one repeated image over and over again. A man standing beside the cabin. Daniel stared at the drawings in confusion. The man looked exactly like him. Same dark hair, same height, same face. The flashlight nearly slipped from his hand. Then he heard her voice behind him. "My father said you would come one day." Daniel spun around. The woman stood in the doorway. She looked real this time. Not ghostly, not imagined. Her dark hair fell over her shoulders, and snowflakes melted against her pale skin though she wore no gloves in the freezing cold. Daniel struggled to speak. "Who are you?" "My name is Anna." "How is this possible?" She stepped slowly into the room. "My father made a promise before he died." Daniel's chest tightened. "What promise?" Anna looked at the drawing on the wall. "That someone carrying the same sadness would come here someday. Someone who lost everything. Someone the mountain would choose." The storm outside roared louder. Daniel shook his head. "This doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to yet." Then she looked directly into his eyes. "But you're not here by accident." Over the following weeks, Anna appeared often. Sometimes at dawn beside the lake. Sometimes near the fireplace after sunset. Always quietly. Always unexpectedly. Daniel never fully understood whether she was alive, a spirit, or something between both worlds. Yet every conversation with her felt more real than anything he had experienced in years. She knew things she shouldn't. She knew about Noah, about Claire, about the guilt Daniel carried every day because he had been driving the car the night his son died. "You blame yourself for surviving," Anna said one evening while they sat outside watching snow fall through moonlight. Daniel stared at the fire. "I was supposed to protect him. You were supposed to love him. And you did. That wasn't enough." Anna's eyes softened. "Love is never small, Daniel." For the first time since Noah's death, Daniel cried openly. Not the quiet tears he hid alone at night. Real grief. The kind that shakes your whole body. And Anna simply sat beside him without speaking while years of pain finally escaped. As winter deepened, the mountains became both beautiful and dangerous. One afternoon Daniel drove into town for supplies and discovered the roads nearly buried beneath snow. An elderly woman at the grocery store recognized him immediately. "You're staying at the Whitmore cabin," she said nervously. Daniel nodded. The woman crossed herself. "You should leave before the mountain takes you too." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean? People disappear up there." "Anna Whitmore disappeared too, didn't she?" The woman's face went pale. "No body was ever found." That night Daniel confronted Anna. "They say you disappeared." She stood silently near the frozen lake. "Tell me the truth." Anna looked toward the mountains. "My father became sick during the last winter we lived here. Very sick. We had no neighbors close enough to help. No roads open because of the storms." Her voice trembled slightly. "I tried walking to town through the mountains." Daniel's stomach tightened. "You froze." Anna nodded slowly. "But before I left, my father made me promise something." "The promise?" "He believed the mountain brought lost souls together. He said someday another broken man would come here carrying unbearable grief. And I had to help him find his way back before the mountain claimed him too." Daniel stared at her, unable to breathe properly. "You've been waiting all these years." Anna smiled sadly. "Yes." A strange ache grew inside Daniel then. Not fear, not confusion, something deeper. Loneliness recognizing loneliness. Weeks turned into months. Winter slowly loosened its grip on the mountains. Snow melted along the lake edges, and birds returned to the forests. And somewhere during those long quiet days, Daniel realized he had started living again. He repaired the cabin roof. He cooked real meals. He laughed sometimes. The heaviness inside him no longer felt endless. Anna changed too. She smiled more often. Her sadness seemed lighter somehow. One evening they sat together on the porch watching golden sunlight spill across the mountains. "I used to think grief was punishment," Daniel admitted quietly. Anna looked at him. "What do you think now?" "I think grief is love with nowhere to go." Tears filled Anna's eyes. My father used to say that. Daniel turned toward her. What happens to you if I leave? The question hung heavily between them. Anna looked toward the distant peaks glowing beneath sunset. I don't know. Daniel realized then what terrified him most. Not ghosts. Not the mountain. Losing her. Because somehow this impossible woman had reached the parts of him buried beneath years of sorrow. And for the first time since Noah died, Daniel wanted tomorrow to exist. But mountains keep their secrets carefully. 3 days later, Daniel discovered something hidden beneath loose floorboards in the upstairs bedroom. A journal. Elias Whitmore's journal. Inside were entries spanning years. Most described mountain weather, wildlife, and his daughter Anna. But the final pages made Daniel's blood run cold. If you are reading this, then the mountain chose correctly. Anna believes she waits to save others, but the truth is far crueler. The mountain does not release souls bound by unfinished grief. My daughter died believing she failed me. And unless someone finally convinces her she is forgiven, she will remain here forever. Daniel read the final line repeatedly. She must forgive herself before dawn reaches the first spring thaw. Otherwise she will disappear completely. Daniel ran outside searching desperately. Anna. The forest answered only with wind. He searched through the night across icy trails and frozen cliffs. Finally, just before dawn, he found her standing at the highest ridge overlooking the valley below. She looked almost transparent beneath the pale morning light. You knew, she whispered softly. Daniel approached carefully. Anna, my father wrote it down. He loved you. Tears streamed down her face. I left him alone to die. You tried to save him. I failed. No. His voice broke. You loved him enough to walk into a deadly storm for him. That isn't failure. Anna shook her head helplessly. You don't understand. Yes, I do. Daniel stepped closer. I spent 3 years believing I killed my son because I survived an accident. I punished myself every single day because I thought grief meant guilt. He took a trembling breath. But loving someone means carrying pain after they're gone. That pain doesn't mean we failed them. The first sunlight touched the mountain peaks. Anna began fading slowly into the light. Fear filled Daniel's chest. No, no, please. She looked at him with heartbreaking tenderness. You helped me remember something. What? That love stays, even after loss. Daniel grabbed her hand, and for one brief moment, it felt warm and real. Anna smiled through tears. You came because you needed saving too. The sunlight grew brighter. Then suddenly the mountain wind softened. The air became still, and Anna whispered the final words Daniel would never forget. Tell your son you lived fully after him. Then she vanished into golden morning light. Gone. The mountain stood silent. Daniel collapsed to his knees crying harder than he ever had before. But strangely, beneath the grief was peace. Real peace. Months later, travelers passing through the mountains noticed something unusual about the old Whitmore cabin. Smoke rose from the chimney again. Lights glowed warmly through the windows. And laughter sometimes echoed across the lake. Daniel stayed, not because he was hiding anymore, but because he had finally learned how to live with memory instead of drowning inside it. He reopened his architecture work remotely and spent his free time helping restore abandoned cabins around the mountain towns. He became part of the community he once avoided. And every spring, on the morning of the first thaw, Daniel climbed the ridge overlooking the valley carrying fresh wildflowers. He always left one flower beside the cliff edge for Anna. Because some people enter our lives for only a moment, yet change our souls forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who needs hope today. Because even the loneliest hearts can find their way home again.